Welcome to CHI, Unlearning Our Loneliness. This is week 7 and the final week of this particular iteration of the class, The Death of Love. Last week, we discussed the world of love, how it's born, how it grows, and how it continues onward. Brockmeyer's tale, in spite of its absurdities, does an excellent job of showing the beautiful joys of being in love, how it affects our perception, our sense of space, our sense of time, our memories. But the world of love is a fragile world, like the soap bubble he discusses, especially if the space of a bubble is shared. It's beautiful. It presents the world through a gossamer lens, and it's likely to burst and explode at any moment. So that was last week. This week, we're looking at Jamie Quatro's short story, Decomposition, a primer for promiscuous housewives, which is in a short story collection called I Want to Show You More. Excellent collection. This story is written in the second person, and it investigates the death of an unconsummated love and paints an unflinching portrait of the consequences of an affair that an affair has on a relationship. The questions guiding today's reading are: 1, does technology enable love to flourish today in spite of an absence of physicality? And 2, what happens to one's world after love dies? So for this particular text, we're just going to do kind of a page-by-page reading of it and explore what occurs. Page 5. The title, Decomposition, a Primer for Promiscuous Housewives, seems odd. The wife, signaled by the you of the text rather than an I or she, never strays physically beyond her marriage. The term housewives seems slightly archaic. Decomposition, of course, always carries with it the significance of an unwriting as well as the decay of matter. The definition of algor mortis, where the body gradually loses heat, is a chilling header for the first section of the story.
I've actually read this. I just realized.
Oh, you have?
Yeah.
Okay, good. So here's how it starts. You go in for a cup of Yogi Calm, choosing this flavor not because you're about to kill the man you've been having an affair with. You don't know this yet, but because calm sounds nice this time of year, and it's too late in the day for caffeine. Unquote. Quatro contrasts the desired calm with the implication of violence, the murder of the man you've had an affair with. The choice of the second person makes this juxtaposition even more jarring than it might have been otherwise. Page 6. It's so hot the skin peels off the roof of your mouth, and it's this sensation you'll come to associate with the moment after months of lying you decide finally to answer your husband's questions truthfully. You're in love with him, aren't you? Yes, you say. Death arrives in a moment of truth. The stakes of this death are yet to be revealed. Your husband tells the 4 children to go upstairs and retreats to his room, leaving you to put the kids to bed. Quote, your husband is curled in the fetal position on his side of the king-sized bed. Beside him, lying face up, is the man with whom you've been having the distance affair. This is a jarring image, and it seems surreal for a moment, but Quatro instantly shifts registers to allow this to become something merely metaphorical. Page 7. You're not surprised to see the other man in this particular spot. In your mind, he's been interjecting himself along this length of bed for the past 10 months. Your husband's shoulders are quivering, and you know you should say or do something to comfort him, but you're shocked to discover that your only concern is for the man in the center of the mattress. And then comes the twist that makes the story incredibly fascinating. Rather than allowing the man to remain symbolic, she concretizes him in a fleshly form. This form lies in the center of the mattress, dividing her from her husband. It's undoubtedly also symbolic, but Quatro pushes past this. Quote, you lie down on your side of the bed, gently touch the man's forehead to wake him up and tell him that the time has come to say goodbye. The skin is cooler than it should be. You sit up. You feel the man's cheeks, chest, and arms. He's cold everywhere. You straddle the body, thinking ABC, remembering only fleetingly how often you'd imagined yourself in exactly this position, but he must have taken his last breath while you were out walking. You collapse beside the man, wrap your warm hand around one of his, the fingers already so still you have to push them down. You knew your confession would do this. What does he do for you that I can't, your husband says. It's all physically rendered. There's no sense that you imagine the body or the stiffening fingers. Imagination is offered as an alternative, but as a past alternative concerning sexual fantasies, right? So she can think of herself as imagining something, but she's not imagining the body in the middle of the bed. Your concern is for the man, not your husband. Your husband suffers, the man is dead, and all you can think of is the man. Quatro then discusses the reaction to the death as one of shock and grief, which makes sense given that it's the death of the man you love. You react to this by shifting away from emotion to engage intellectually. Quote, the death is as it should be, you know this intellectually. In fact, the overall intellectual quality of your mood is striking, the absence of raw feeling. You wonder if you truly feel nothing, or if you feel so much that it is beyond the capacity of a human body to process it. The body, however, that's the end of the quote, so the body gains more gravity as a character in the story instead of merely disappearing. Its materiality lingers even though it is never actualized for your body. Quote, the least you can do is create a little beauty around the edges of death. But when you enter the bedroom, you notice the man's skin has turned the color of wet newspaper. You smell menthol and burnt plastic and something like rotten Nilla wafers. The word inaccessible lights up against the back of your eyelids. It is perhaps this realization, you are shut out, that makes you grab the bedpost and say to your husband still curled on the side of his bed, but I wanted him. I checked the body out, your husband said. It's fucking wax. He sits up. You didn't think it was real, did you? So the revelation that the body's wax explains the odd smells you've noted, the burnt plastic, the menthol. The most peculiar revelation for the reader, however, is that the husband can sense and feel the body as well. Your husband's concluding challenge, you didn't think it is real, is ambiguous. It refers to both body and relationship. The presence of the body doesn't comfort you. You see inaccessible, shut out. Your only recourse is the honesty of desire, which is neither excuse nor justification. So what we have so far, we have the bed, the fetally curled up husband who's dead, the man, and you. And he's right there in the middle, wax, kind of smelly. And remember, when she talks about the honesty of desire, the truth equals death. The truth is what kills him. Page 9. The pastor and his wife arrive, grave and jovial, because you've sinned and been forgiven. Quatro's story, and the whole of the book is a series of interconnected vignettes. Not necessarily the same character, but you get the sense that it probably is, that discuss different elements of the affair and the relationship. And it comes from somebody who has a very conservative Christian background. So all of this is predicated on a moral structure at odds with this kind of thing. Again, remember though, she hasn't met the man in the bed. She hasn't seen him. She doesn't know what he smells like. They've only talked long distance. This is the most material interaction that she's had with the man that she's loved. Is right there in the middle of the bed. Page 10. Part 2, bloat. Gases accumulate, creating enough pressure to force liquids from the eyes, nose, mouth, ears, anus. The narrator discusses Christmas time, a time devoted to family, which ensures that your infidelity will add tension. I'm going to get rid of it, you tell your husband. Leave it, your husband says. I need you to see that it won't decompose. I won't look at it, you say. Look at all you want, he says. To prove yourself, you roll the corpse over to your side of the bed. One of the arms winds up twisted beneath the torso, a horrifying, impossible bend in the wrist. You resist the urge to adjust. You slide over to your husband's side of the bed, across the midsection, which is a bit moist. You wish there was a stench or something to permanently disgust you, but there's only the menthol plastic cookie scent, which you don't actually find unpleasant. Quatro emphasizes the reality of the unreal body. Although it was done over phone and email, the presence of the man has physical implications on the marriage. It's continually in the bed, right? Even when she pushes it over to one side and slides across the moist middle, it's still there. Quote, You turn your back to the man's body and wrap your arms around your husband's chest from behind, clinging to his torso like it's a buoy. He doesn't move. You lift your shirt so he can feel the warmth of your breasts pressing into his back. Your husband remains a lifeline. You've chosen him, chosen to discard the man whose waxen body never leaves. You cling to him, you touch his body with yours. He doesn't move. So Quatro adds some little details. Friends advise grieving. You look at the body and you remember the paunchy abdomen that indicated something, quote, you admired about the man, the way he embraced his own imperfections and yours, end quote. The man's love, assuming it was love, engaged you where you weren't perfect. You felt comfortable outside of the world of Christmas parties and letters. You felt comfortable being you. Page 12. Quatro has you visit a Christian therapist. You describe the loss of your world. Quote, in your stomach. Every sentence you were in the habit of crafting for the other man, every thought and feeling you were accustomed to sharing, is now taking up residence inside your body. You might just need to unload. End quote. It's a version of words being made flesh. Or it's another way of saying she has to eat her words. The words born of love in that world have no place to go anymore. They stick in your craw. There's no release and no escape. You live in a co-created world at odds with your daily existence, and now nobody supports the other side of it. It's lonely. It feels tense. And again, the beauty of love, like we talked about last week, is that it creates a world. And the world is a world of stories. It's a narrative world. And it's filled with words, and words that take on a heightened symbolic meaning relative to that relationship. They're pet names, they're inside jokes, they're all the sorts of things that you narrate to yourself when you're not even talking to him, that go and they help support this world, which itself exists. Remember, go back to checkout, right? It's the secret world inside the public one. You have a public one, but this private world is the true world, and it's the real world. And it's kind of at odds with the other world, but it itself helps support you in that public world in a massive way. It's big and it's real, and the who you are here becomes more there. Once you touch and kill, there's no more contact. You have a space. As the space was, say, in the sister, where it creates the possibility of love, the space here is terrible. It's horrible. Boy, everything is the most real and most true. Really, all the Christian have anywhere to go. Everything just pop and they have access. There's no meaning. There's nowhere to sit anymore. There's no context where those words have life. And they're the most vibrant, living words that you'd ever known how to speak. And you're muted. And the pressure builds and builds, but it's a pressure in the space of sheer emptiness. Does that make sense so far?
That's the watermelon, right?
Yeah. So, part 3, active decay. And again, these are her headers. She just goes through this decay. The greatest loss of marriage flew on the body. Quote, husband requires reassurance. Body's still on, so you cover, you scrape for peace and keep, end quote. Again, Quatro's attention to the details of the physical persistence of the affair, even though they never met, right? Never met in person, never saw each other in person. There was no sexual contact physically between them. The physicality of the man in the bed lingers, and it adds to its emotional consequence. And it's a lot of what makes this story, I think, amazingly great to read. Page 13. Quatro shows the difficulty of letting go of the world you shared with your lover. Quote, listening to your he used to hear, your name to remember what it was like to listen. In the shower, you trail handfuls of your own hair on aisles. Handfuls, right? Just ripping them out. Handfuls of your own hair. You remember what the man on your mattress said about yanking your hair, how he knew, without your telling him, that you'd like to be handled that way. End quote. She then mirrors the conversation with her husband. Go into the bedroom, peek beneath the sheet. The lower jaw is fallen open. You take your husband by the hand, lead him into the bedroom. You want him to feel pity for the dead man. You want him to know the man was real. Your husband punches the mirrored closet door, holds up his fist, bloody at the knuckles. Here's what's real, he says. End quote. Again, at the heart of this particular affair is the question of reality. The narrator, the you of the story, feels the reality of grief and mourning and loss. The husband feels the reality of betrayal. The unconsummated quality of the wife's love is an unsettling and odd question that doesn't go away. The wife wants to defend the reality of her experience, an experience that continues to affect her on visceral levels, right? Even if he never touched her physically, the effect that he had on her body is still a physical, visceral reaction, right? She's sexually excited by the words and the sounds of this man. It changes her body chemistry. They don't have to feel each other's flesh. It changes her body and how her body is. It's real. And she wants her husband to know that it's real. But what does real mean? And he just holds up bloody knuckles. That's what's real. That's what's pain. The husband still grapples with the immediacy of pain, but his pain is real blood and not a waxen body. The narrator continues keeping her world alive in a small office space. Quote, in the office, you reread the books that you read and discussed with the other man. You watch movies on your laptop, the ones you talked about watching together. You make playlists. On one of them, you include the MP3 of his voice reading a chapter in a Duras novel. You can spend entire mornings lying on the futon, listening to the man read the Duras chapter, a hand beneath the zipper on your jeans. Only once do you dial a cell phone, careful not to press send. You get up in the middle of the night to write letters to the dead man. You carry the laptop to the upstairs guest room and lock the door behind you. The letters are long, intimate, sexually detailed. The pressure inside you eases in exponential relation to the number of pages you write. End quote. The children wake up and knock on the door. I heard a noise. You smell funny. End quote. Quatro's emphasis remains on communicating, on the heart's refusal to close down a world that had been opened, a closure that will feel like loneliness. The whole sequence is filled with a frenetic energy as the narrator tries to recapture that which she never had, the feeling of the absence of loneliness. The relationship, however, remains entirely in her head at this point. She only feels pressure released with her production. She receives nothing. In many ways, this narrator mirrors Lewis from Brockmeyer's story, the choice of a safe relationship mediated by distance that prevents her from actually unlearning her loneliness in a fully consummated way. Right? So, whereas in a real relationship, in theory, the relationship is predicated on give and take, right? Each person receives, each person gives. In Lewis's case, like the you of this story, there's nothing that's really taken back. Or if there's something back, it's something that you imagine that you receive back. All you're doing is producing love. You're loving at something. And if you get anything in return, it's mediated by the imagination. And whatever she received while the affair was going on, at this point, all she has is production. She's reproducing her world all the time because she's so scared of what will happen once that world disappears. Because it was real to her. Yeah.
So how is the affair really ended if she's still attempting to relive it every moment of her life?
I believe you just asked a real question. What is it real? Was it a real affair? Is it really over? He's dead, right? There's a wax body in the bed. What's that mean? Does that mean that it's really over or really going on? What does it mean that the real body is really there? Is that really the man? What's real? Okay. Yeah, that's as good as I can get. Does that make sense why it's a problem though?
Yeah.
And that's really what the story is pushing on. What is the reality of love? She doesn't know what was real about her love. She does know that she really suffers when whatever it was ends. What's that end really look like? She doesn't know. Is it really ended? She's not receiving from him. She's pumping herself into a world that doesn't exist and trying to cling to finding something that comes back at her. but that's it. Is it really over? Was it ever really there? Did it ever really start? It's really, really murky. It's really hard to know.
Do she and her husband have a relationship, or is it always going to be mediated by this waxed body?
We'll have to read to the end of the story, Jake. Can you wait a few more minutes?
Yeah.
All right. So we're on page 14, book 4, butyric fermentation. In this stage, the body is no longer referred to as a corpse, but as a carcass. In this chapter, the narrator wants to show the body to the children. Quote, "We have to bring it out into the open," you say to your husband. "The kids can smell it on me." "There is no smell," your husband says. "It's been a long time since you've seen his eyes." The kids are confused, and the narrator tells the kids that it's an early Christmas surprise. Book 5, or part 5, dry decay. Only the skin, cartilage, and bones remain. If bone is exposed, the carcass will be referred to as partially skeletonized. Page 15. The woman opens the quilt, fills it with, so she had tied the body in a quilt to bring it down to the kids. They don't actually open it. So she takes the quilt back and says, "Just kidding," and fills it with toys. She takes the body to the basement and stuffs it into the 2-person sleeping bag she'd bought with her husband and puts that into a broken playpen. Quote, "You push the playpen into the corner with no windows and cover the body with folding camp chairs, extension cords, leftover buckets of paint. You arrange things in front of the playpen, a bicycle, an old armchair." End quote. The body, in other words, is wrapped in an early remnant of the narrator's marriage and placed in a past thing from their children. It's then covered by remaining items that have no emotional value. The goal is to make the body become a thing in the past, something surrounded by memories of her family. But, quote, "When you finish, you notice that part of the sleeping bag is still bulging through the playpen's mesh side. You kneel and run your hand lightly over the bulge, which is sharp and angular, knee, elbow. You kiss the bulge, lean your forehead against it. Close your eyes and imagine it's a cheekbone. You remember how the man wanted you to call him by his childhood nickname, how he said making love, real sex, if you could ever have it, would feel like coming home. You remember a recorded sigh, the sound of saliva on his tongue." End quote. Even here, the presence of the body triggers memories of a world that she remains unwilling to close. Her desire is to share with the man, to receive him, even though this desire is currently mediated in grotesque and disturbing ways. She still has love. Is that love real? The narrator doesn't tell us. Is this housewife promiscuous? The narrator doesn't tell us. Moving on. The narrator loses weight and tries to forge ahead with her life. Quote, "You tell your husband you took the body to the dump and he holds you and says he's ready to make love again, undresses you slowly. He's patient with you and generous with himself. You're blessed to be with a man like this. Want him, you think. Want him." End quote. The husband, who has evidently been moving through his own stages of anger and denial, understands her feigned dumping of the body to be a second chance. He lowers his defenses, which have undoubtedly made him lonely, and tries to be with her. Right? I mean, the husband this whole time has built a huge, massive wall against his wife because he's hurt. I mean, what he's suffering, that's real. Right? His wife really loves another man who she hasn't even met instead of him. That's really hurt. And in order to protect from the hurt, there's a massive wall that he's put up. But he still loves her. And his love can't get through that wall. And he's not getting anything back at all from her, right? And so in order to unlearn his own loneliness, he has to erase that wall, at least a little, and try to let her come back in. He's lonely. He misses his wife. He wants it to work out. So, she attempts to will her desires. She attempts to want him. She wants to want him. She can't want him. It's failure. Page 17. Quote, "You are terrified and certain that the ability to lubricate is connected to the man in the basement. You grow desperate. Watch Asian breast massage how-to videos. You watch the porn, then call your husband and beg him to come home right now. Telling your son the sin of fantasy is less destructive than the sin of depriving him. End quote. The problem, of course, is that she's depriving him of an actual relationship. She's giving him what he wants, or the form of what he wants, but not the content of what he wants. He really wants her. When he wants sex with her, he wants sex with her, not just sex. I mean, he might also just want sex, I don't know, but he wants a relationship. He's lonely. He's vulnerable. He's unguarded now. And she's doing the best she can to find him and at least give him something, because she has nothing against her husband. She cares about him, but he's no man in the bed. Or man in the basement at this point, right? There's just that moist spot in the middle that she crosses over every single time she wants to touch him. She's still not with her husband. She can only desire to desire him. Her body still aches to unlearn its loneliness with a very specific other, with a very specific body. And it's not her husband's body. She doesn't attend with compassion to her husband's pain, but stays detached from him. Right? And that's the problem. She, in some ways, is trying to share the loneliness that she has, right? What's real to her is pain. It's the pain of missing that guy. And she tries to say it was real, right? She's trying to share herself in her most vulnerable, painful way, and her husband can't deal with it because he's too hurt, right? And so she shuts down. She doesn't give him her pain anymore because he can't handle it. And instead what she does is buy vibrators. Quote, "You carry the box into your bedroom and set the classics in the center of your mattress. It arches away from you, veined in purple, suction cup at its base. A wicked, unlovely, purely useful thing." I love that line. "You sit on the bed beside the classics and whisper the dead man's name. Then you shove it back in the box and bury it deep in the communal dumpster at the end of the alley." End quote. The narrator's loneliness is caused by holding on to past invitations to love that were gratifying in as much as they were impossible. Think Chekhov here, right? The beauty of the love that Gurov had was predicated on the fact that it was a long-distance affair and something private instead of something public, right? That's what we talked about with Lady and the Dog. Same thing's going on here. The page that we're on, this is page 17, it does an excellent job of detailing how the wife stays away from her husband emotionally, giving up her body only after pornographic mediations. But she still cannot consummate her relationship with the dead man, not even with a sex toy, right? Not even the classics offers her the privilege of consummating and ending her loneliness. She can't do it. It doesn't work. The plastic and the wax aren't good enough. They're not him. They're stand-ins. She's stuck between two worlds that don't exist, right? There's the married life that her husband has. She's not in that world. And there's the life of the corpse, and she's not in that world. She's here. She doesn't have a world anymore. And she's alone. She's all alone. And there's nobody she can talk to about it because she can't talk to him and she can't talk to her husband. All of that pain, all of that longing, all of that love is dead. There's no place for it in any world that she occupies. The affair ensured that the narrator would remain protected from a conjoined physical and emotional intimacy, right? As long as she never meets him, as long as all of that love feeling is hypermediated away, she's protected from being hurt emotionally and physically at the same time in the same way by the same person. She's safe. But her success leads to this point of absolute loneliness. Does that make sense? In the next scene, the narrator leads her husband to the basement. Quote, "Listen," you say to the man, "I need you to say something, anything." From inside the sleeping bag, you hear a crackling noise. "Something stinks," your husband said. "Just one word," you say to the man, "one of our words, so my husband can hear." End quote. Without any feedback for a prolonged period of time, with the absolute absence of receiving any emotional nourishment at all, the narrator shares that which is most vulnerable with her husband again. Right? So she's been here for so long that she's desperate for some sort of connection, and so is willing to talk to her husband about it. She brings him back downstairs to the man in the bag. Her vulnerability is still predicated in terms of what she offers, though. It's not an openness of consideration, like we talked about the first week when we considered the lobster, right? That kind of consideration is an openness to the other. She's not open to her husband. She's definitely not open to her husband's pain, right? She's too full of her own pain to really consider her husband's. But she's willing at least to offer something instead of receiving it. And what she offers at least is something true. For the first time in the story, or maybe the second time, she's really trying to be honest. It seems like an honest attempt to connect with her husband at the only place she can, the man, right? Because the man at this point necessarily mediates a relationship back to her husband, right? She can't do this, really. She can't do this. She has to go through the man in order to find her husband again. That's why the man's laying in the middle of the body originally. I'm sorry, the body's laying in the middle of the bed. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Whore, the man says, his voice muffled. You sit back on your heels. What the hell, your husband says. Adulteress, the man says. Bathsheba, Rahab, your fault, your fault, your fault, he says. What the hell, your husband says again. Addict, abuser. He's not remembering things right, you say to your husband. My God, your husband says, staring at the playpen. Is that him? It's not his fault, you say. I think I just killed him too quickly. Femme fatale. Quatro has the husband do what he can. He didn't know you, your husband says. He puts his arm around you. I'll take care of him tomorrow, he says. The two of you head back upstairs. Before you turn out the light, you turn and face the man in the playpen. Don't worry, you say. I won't remember you like this. With the end of the story, as the light fades to darkness and the narrator trusts her husband to take care of him, the reader is left not knowing whether this attempt will finally allow her to leave the world of the man behind. We can't know if the couple will stay married, happily or unhappily. This marriage seems quite non-reciprocal. The husband loves the wife, who loves the man who does not exist. The wife is lonely, the husband is lonely, and we have no idea what the man thinks or feels. That's decomposition. Any questions about the story? Zach?
So since this man was essentially her ideal projected onto this corpse, are his final words a reflection of her feelings of internal guilt?
Well, hold on before you go. Okay. So what is she in love with? I mean, she's in love with a voice, with words, with memories of that voice and those words, with emails, with texts, with time, with pictures. I mean, she's in love with a lot of things, and all of these things work together to build a world, right? At the center of that world is a cause that is not her, right? She's not imagining these things. These come from a man who gives birth to that world with her, right? This is a co-created world where that voices, words, memories, et cetera, have meaning only for the two of them, right? So it's not just that she's projecting, she's been inhabiting a world that's been co-created by somebody she's just happened to not meet, right? But it's not just that she's projecting. The production, it's not really projecting as much as production, right? She keeps trying to produce and reproduce the world by going back to the voice, the words, the memories, the emails, right? She keeps living there and inhabiting there, but it's not a co-created world anymore. It's just her production of it and reproduction and reproduction and reproduction frenetically, right? But that's different from idealizing the man, because what she loves is his imperfection. Yeah, maybe, but it is him. It's him in his most platonic, debodied form. She really knows him at his most himness. Maybe. I mean, Aristophanes wouldn't think so. Right? For Aristophanes, you need to have the body. You need to have flesh for it to be love. She has love without flesh. Is it more divine? Is it more holy? Is it more spiritual? Is it more real this way? She loves him in spite of his not having a body. She loves him in spite of the lack of a great sex life, or a sex life that occurs 99% in her own imagination. At the same time, whose sex life doesn't occur mostly in their own imagination? If you can get out of your own imagination and truly inhabit your sex life, that's a happy sex life, and that's a good relationship. But when you think of the effect, this is a little aside. When you think of the effect of pornography on any given relationship, any actual sex that occurs between two partners that's mediated by porn automatically goes through the imagination. It's 99% imagination. You're imagining the last time you had sex with this person, which was better than this time, which is kind of boring. You're imagining a former partner. You're imagining something that you would rather be doing. It's all in the imagination. But if something shatters your imagination and penetrates to something that's truly physical and raw and visceral and real, that's when it's good. But it just takes a lot to get us out of our heads. Sorry, that was an aside. What was your question, Zach?
Your question was about the words the man speaks at the end, and
Right.
whether
Oh, okay.
is that
Yeah.
is that her own guilt, or is that what is it? I think
The husband hears it though, right? I mean, that's what's weird. I mean, that's what's weird about this whole thing. The husband sees the body. The husband smells the body.
Dismisses him as a threat.
What?
And he sort of dismisses him as a threat after hearing those words.
Yeah.
Oh, this is what I have to contend with?
He doesn't even
Oh,
love you,
this is
right? It's not
as
even there.
experienced I believed it once was.
Yeah. But she doesn't remember him like that. She's not ready to give up the world. That's not how she wants it to end. That can't be true. Even though truth is death, right? The death isn't quite truth. She doesn't want to believe that he's dead yet. She still wants that world, just a little piece of it, to stay with her as something possible instead of something expired. Does that answer your question?
In a way, yeah.
In a way. What are the words? I don't know. I mean, they might be the words that she imagines he would say. They might actually be the words. I mean, we don't know what the status of this thing is, right? This is a complete unknown. I've never read a story with that weird of a not symbol. Because it's not just symbolic, right? It's also symbolic, but it's more than symbolic. It's really weirdly concretized. I don't know what the heck to do with it. I don't know what the heck to do with those words. It's great. Because it's more than just a symbol. And what those words would mean, I don't know. How the husband hears them, I don't know. I don't know what that means. And that's what's fascinating, I think, about the story. Is that a better answer?
Yeah.
Okay. Jake, question?
No. I'm still thinking about what Zach was asking about, and like it's really weird that the husband hears it, right? And because because the husband has that man in his world also in a way, like
Yeah.
but that's not what I would expect the husband to expect the corpse to say either. It's like not the readers are expecting that.
No.
It's so out of left field.
Yeah. You know, whether he feels hurt and rejected, because again, it seems like she just told her husband the truth and then it was over. No more contact, right? No contact at all. She doesn't tell the man that she's going to tell her husband. She just tells her husband, and that's what kills him. There's no going back. There's nothing, right? She says, this is done. We don't know that she tells him that she's going to say that. And so we don't know if maybe the man is upset about just suddenly having all contact shut off. You know, he doesn't have a say about it. We don't know. But it's weird. But it's weird in the best kind of weird way, I think. Other questions?
That's really, really good. In any way, do you think that this writer I know nothing about, that he is an archetypical weakling emotionally? That, I mean, you know, that he just takes it and takes it and takes it, and
The husband, you mean?
yeah.
I mean, he does bloody up his knuckles.
Yeah, I mean, he punches it in the mirror. It says, you want real? That's real. I mean, that's pretty intense. I mean, it doesn't seem like he takes it either, right? Because he says, like, no, I mean, there's no contact. You got to cut that out. Like, I mean, this isn't going to work. You know, I don't think so. But I think he just doesn't understand what's actually going on because she hides it. And he has too much of his own pain to see hers. He can't consider her pain because he hurts too much. Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
I see what you're saying though, where he does seem so like just like wimpy or well,
He's in love. He loves his wife. Like, come back. Come back. I love you. I can forgive even this. Because I want you so badly. I will forgive even this if I can have you back. That's not weak. That's strength. That takes courage. That takes endurance and fortitude to have to sleep with the corpse of the man that your wife wanted to have sex with. Watch it decompose. Watch her suffer over the pain of losing someone she never met. And still love her through that? I don't think that's weak. I can't think of very much that would be more courageous than that. Right? It's not like he can't do better. It's that he loves her. He loves their family. And he knows that even though she made a mistake, he's gonna love her anyway. And he's gonna do what he can to make it work. For real. Forever. The way a marriage should. He wants her. Is that a better answer?
Yeah, and now go back to her. Is a little of her stirring in every woman?
I'm not going to answer a question about every woman. That'll get me in trouble. You know what? I don't know. I mean, it's not like affairs are novel to the 21st century American. You know, like what is it? What is it that causes? Because an affair is only possible when there's not a world, right? If two partners co-create a world and that world satisfies both of them, there's no room for an affair. An affair only comes with somebody like Gurov, right? Where they're not really creating a world. They're creating the form of a world without the content. Or they want the content without the form. Where there's something broken. And actually, I think what it is, affairs come up when somebody is unwilling to unlearn their loneliness. They want to keep their loneliness. They want to preserve it. They want it to be safe. They want to protect themselves, right? So they compartmentalize love into this one, and this one, and this one. And they'll get a little bit of this, and a little bit of that, and a little bit of that. And then, I'm like 85% not lonely in these 3 different ways, right? That's okay. And if I'm going to create a world, I'm going to create a world over here where it's not real. It's an imagined world, which is beautiful because it's perfect. Because it doesn't have all the flaws that come with reality. Reality is always flawed. The imagined world is totally perfect, right? So that's safe. This husband who loves me so much that he'll stand with me beside all this, he's safe. But the risk of actually lowering my guard and becoming vulnerable and considering somebody else's pain and being open to being hurt, to really unlearn our loneliness, it's hard to do. And that's why there are affairs. We have affairs to keep us lonely. Just lonely enough that we don't depend on anybody else. Because that's where safety is.
What if you look at it more like she was being greedy? And sure, maybe they did have a world, but you have an affair, you're not bringing, or you can tell yourself you're not bringing that third party into the bedroom of your other world. Mm-hmm. And you can hope that won't happen. I felt like the story was really talking about the inevitability of that becoming a huge problem.
Yeah, it's right in the middle of things. Mm-hmm. I mean, is she being greedy? Sure, right? She's not being honest. Does she know what she's doing? I don't think any more than Gurov or Anna did. Mm-hmm. That's why we talked about self-deception in the middle of the class. It's a way that you don't tell yourself what it is that you're really doing. What is she really looking for when she starts talking to him? However they end up meeting, whether it's a chat room or I don't know how they meet. She never says, right? But somehow, even though they've never met, she falls in love. She's found her soulmate, maybe, whatever that means, right? She's found a world that she can inhabit with love, even though she's never met him. Is that greed? I don't know. Is it greedy when anybody falls in love? I don't think so, right? It's just here's this thing here. I'm going to explore it. Oh, look, this is a big, beautiful world. But I'm not having sex with him, right? Because I haven't met him. So it's fine. It's okay. Oh, no. There's this wax corpse in the middle of the bed. How'd that happen? Nobody really wants to put a wax corpse in the middle of their bed. You don't eat your Wheaties for breakfast and then spring out of bed and say, great, I'm going to be infidelitous today, right? That's, I want to become a promiscuous housewife. Nobody says that. Mm-hmm. But somehow, there it is. And it happens to a lot of people, a lot of times. And I guess my argument, again, is that it happens because we're so afraid of unlearning our loneliness that we're willing to put up with being lonely enough to feel safe. And it's that need for safety and security that messes a lot of things up and hurts a lot of people. But the only thing scarier than loneliness is unlearning it. And that's this class. Does that make sense?
Makes a lot of sense.
I didn't understand until the final few sentences, but you clarified everything.
Good. All right, implications. In the summer session, we discussed Aristophanes' speech and focused on the dark and doubtful presentiment that attends what the soul desires and cannot tell. Those are his words. The death of love seemed a candidate for this, right? What does the soul pretend, or what's the soul desire? What's the dark and doubtful part? It's the fact that love's going to die. Every relationship ends in death. Every relationship will fail. And whether that's after 70 or 80 years of joy together, whether if it's after 2 brief and fiery weeks, whether if it's, it could be 9 months of joy and terror merged together before everything explodes and dissolves. You don't know. You don't know. What you can know for sure, though, is that that relationship will end. Maybe somebody gets cancer and dies. Maybe there's a car accident. Maybe somebody moves to Mexico pursuing some co-created world that they've never met. I don't know, but it ends. Everything ends, and the soul knows that, and that's its dark and doubtful presentiment. Quatro's story illustrates the difficulty of terminating a world that had been opened, even if this opening were ultimately incomplete. Right? She never consummated her love. It's an incomplete world. It's not really real, but it's real. It's just not really real, right? The waxy body of the man, which she refuses to reduce to the level of an allegory or symbol, gives it an impossible materiality, and it haunts her, but so do her memories and her desires. Right? Zach?
And yet the body itself doesn't physically decompose.
No.
Because in the context of this allegory, it's not
the right kind of real.
an organic thing.
Yeah. It's technologically mediated. It's inorganic. It doesn't have the reality of something that could naturally die.
So then what is actually decomposing?
Her marriage. The story. The affair, in a way, right? Over time, it starts to sprinkle away. It starts to break down somewhat. Maybe, maybe not. Because it's an unreal thing. It's an unreal love. It's unrealized, definitely, right? But how can something go away that was never there?
Boy, when it starts talking, though, it seems like she's like seeing it in a new light.
Yeah.
Like it has decomposed to a significant extent.
Yeah, it's no longer the childish name to say when they're having sex. It's rough. It's been sitting in the basement under trash for a while, so who knows what that did to its mood, but it's not happy there. All right. Does that answer?
Yeah.
Okay. So during this session, we've discussed different factors that seem to be necessary preconditions for the possibility of love. They're things that we need to consider before we're able to truly unlearn our loneliness. These include 1, the openness of consideration, sharing the pain of another. 2, making a space for love within one's life. 3, understanding the difference between love and a libidinal attachment. 4, allowing a fluid grasp on identity without a need to define the partner. 5, dismissing the possibility of self-deception within one's relationship. 6, choosing to co-create a world of love with a partner who can join you. 7, letting go of past worlds with the faith that new ones can be open. Our choices of partners too often allow us to remain alone. They're impossible loves that are mediated by anything but the flesh, and they're therefore generally too safe to truly unweave the walls that keep us isolated and alone. Something visceral has to happen, not just internally, but externally, to truly allow ourselves to feel passion. To truly allow something to be allowed, to let the passive part of passion, which is also the painful part. Balancing this out, though, there's also the notion that unlearning our loneliness is the easiest possible thing, right? Those list of 7 things are they're Herculean tasks, right? Each one of those alone, to know that you're not self-deceived, to find a partner who co-creates with you, to have a space for, these are impossible, right? Each one of them are astronomically difficult tasks. But at the same time, unlearning our loneliness is the easiest possible thing. We're invited to do so during a random conversation, in a meeting of the eyes, when we're least expecting that opening to emerge. In an instant, it seems, we're released from the lonely world that's imprisoned us and set free to choose something different. And from that perspective, perhaps this session's lessons are best thought of as things to reflect upon as you pursue life with the partners you find to attend you. Especially if you find yourself in a position where you feel the shadow of loneliness beginning to assail you in the midst of a relationship. Any other questions?
Sort of on the side that, what am I to take? This thing in the middle of the bed that she loved with voiced words, the mood it provoked and everything. But at some point she goes out and she puts pornography in her bed and buys a vibrator. I mean, that you've taken.
But she doesn't use it, right? She buys it and she sets it up, but she can't use it. Because it's not real in the right kind of real, right? I mean, it'd be a real physical sensation, but it's not him. Even though he's waxy, it's still not him. And she doesn't even want the kind of feeling of not him at all. But she's never felt him, right? It's this bizarre, beautiful, weird thing.
I would have liked to see at some point the emergence of the wax body over the course of the marriage.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's not, it doesn't seem like the kind of thing that just
But she killed it. And once she kills it, once the world dissolves from her head, it materializes in the bed. Because she can't project and co-create it outside anymore, right?
Oh,
it's sucked into herself, and then it becomes like she has nowhere to put it. She's not externalizing it, and so there it sits in the middle of her bed.
So it is that instantaneous?
I mean, according to Quatro, it is, right? I mean, once she tells her husband the truth and kills him, there's the corpse on the bed. Here's that relationship, which is dead. Now what? It's still there, but it's dead, but it wasn't really alive. It's this waxy thing, and it's not going to go away because it's not the organic kind of thing that you can heal and move on from. There's no moving on because it never really was. You were never really there. You can't move on, but you can't go back, and you can't undo it, and you're stuck. Other questions? Is that helpful?
You guys aren't married, right? No. Be careful.
Is that helpful?
Very, very.
Okay.
Are you married?